There is an enhanced version of the Balances boss that did just get added today. It pretty much is the equivalent of the everdark Sovereign bosses, but this boss is technically not called an everdark Sovereign, and it's instead called the Salvation's Standard Bearers. And I'll give my opinions about the boss towards the end of the video and show off some gameplay. But first, I want to talk about their boss relic. The Will of Balance is pretty much just another version of the Will of Balances, has both the melee attack power and the skill attack power, which is 5 and 20% damage respectively. The main reason you do want to be using this relic is because if you have like a specific skill build in mind. But the third perk is different, because instead of continuous FP recovery, it now has occasionally nullify attacks when damage negation is lowered. Now what this means is that any single time that you have your damage negation lowered, you have a 20% chance to not take damage on a hit. And you all know this happens because like a white aura would actually be surrounding the player character. It doesn't do like a unique dodging animation like the Wilder's passive. It pretty much just gives you iframes 20% of the time as long as you have your damage negation lowered. And to have your damage negation lowered, it could either be by certain types of bosses just debuffing you, or you could actually go ahead and debuff yourself. You can use things like the Howl of Shiburi incantation, also the Dragon Bolt Blessing incantation, the Blood Bowl Aromatics can debuff you, the Scepter of the All-Knowing Weapon skill, the Windy Crystal tier, the Crucible Feather Talisman, specific curses from the deep relics like repeated evasions lower damage negation, or damage negation lowered after a dodge or while healing, or even like weapon passives like lower damage negation at lower stamina. The increased damage from Night's Encroachment is something that I honestly would pick up all the time if I did have this relic perk. And even the Scorpion Charms, which definitely the Scorpion Charms are going to be the best pairing because they only lower your physical damage negation by 3%, and it pretty much just activates this relic perk perpetually. So as long as you have this talisman equipped, 20% of the time that you get hit, it's actually going to do no damage. There is also one particular mechanic in the game that has you take damage when you interact with certain environments. And you might have guessed it, and that is water. Any single time that you're interacting with water, whether you're standing on a puddle or a lake, or any single time that it's raining, your lightning damage negation is lowered. So this is going to always be active. So there's so many parts of an expedition where this thing is just going to be like a nice passive bonus to have. Now this wouldn't be something that I would rely on, because I have used this relic for many games now, and it feels like there's times that I get hit like 20 times in a row and it hasn't even procced a single time. So I definitely wouldn't build around it by trying to purposely debuff yourself. So definitely don't start running repeated evasions, lower damage negation. I honestly wouldn't even recommend running the Fine Crucible Feather Talisman or the Windy tier either. But definitely the best pairings for this particular relic perk would be the Scorpion Charms and the Scepter of the All-Knowing skill. Which the Scepter of the All-Knowing is a hammer that is very likely to find on the Undertaker. So this actually does pair very nicely alongside with her, because the Scepter of the All-Knowing skill only debuffs your magic and holy damage negation, and it's only by 10%. So physical, fire, and lightning damage is completely untouched, but you still will gain the benefits of the occasionally nullified attacks. But this perk is not the reason that you want to run this particular relic, and it's purely because of the skill attack power. And although I do consider this to be an upgrade over the other Balances relic, because I don't really value the continuous FP recovery as much, both of them are still going to be completely relevant because both the melee and skill attack power do stack. So if you have both of the Balancer relics equipped, you're going to be getting 11% more melee attack power and 44% more skill attack power, because it is a multiplicative buff like all buffs in the game. And I was running this with plenty of different characters. The most success that I did have with this particular relic was with the Executor and finding the Rivers of Blood, because with the Executor, you can also fit in the Successive Attacks relic. And this build was completely broken. It just destroyed anything and everything. Even if it was really resist to fire damage, it's still destroyed. But even if you don't find Rivers of Blood, using things like Unsheath or the Moonveil Katana, those weapon skills are also going to do really well. But yeah, if you were confused, it is just for weapon skills. Character skills don't get boosted by this. But this build also worked really well on the Scholar with the Bloodblade Ash of War. Probably wasn't going to be as consistent as the Executor, but this one you can actually guarantee starting off with right at the beginning. I did actually make a build with a Wilder and Flaming Strike, and that just completely destroyed the Everdark Balances as well. And another reason why it's going to be very good with the Wilder is because almost every single weapon in the game is going to be good with him. So if you find any of those like legendary great swords or any just good quality weapon in general with a hard hitting skill, this build is just going to be broken. The Duchess can be very similar in that regard, although the only weapon skill that was really worth running was Hoarfrost Stomp, but even then, Hoarfrost Stomp damage isn't really too great. It's only really good for its status buildup in killing trash mobs, not really for boss damage. But the Duchess with her daggers can be likely to find things like the Glintstone Kris or the Black Knife, Blade of Calling, Reduvia, which all have amazing weapon skills. You could also run things like Dormant Katanas and try and find the Moonveil, or Dormant Scythes with the Faith Relic and maybe find things like the Halo Scythe in Deep at Night. Although I do think the Duchess is still better with spells, but with how unforgiving the new map is when it comes to finding spells, this weapon skill build is definitely going to be more consistent. The Raider could also do very well with this relic because you can start off with Eruption, and that could be a decent option to counter those bosses weaker to fire damage. Although there aren't too many larger weapons that he's already likely to find that come with like hard-hitting damaging skills. The Undertaker can obviously be another great pairing because, as I mentioned earlier, the Undertaker is most likely to benefit of the occasionally nullified attacks effect because you can find the Scepter of the All-Knowing. And I did actually make a build around this with Sacred Blade, which was pretty cool. Although it didn't really perform as well as things like Rivers of Blood or the Flaming Strike build. But if you find things like Marika's Hammer, it could be pretty nice, although that's very risky when it does come to Deep of Night. The Iron Eye is actually another really good pairing because he's also one of a few characters that do have the color combinations to be able to have the 2 Balancer Relics and the successive attacks in one. Now, unfortunately, when you do have all 3 of these slots active, you can't actually run any dormant powers for the base game. So you can't really guarantee to be able to get a specific melee-based weapon and try and get high damage out of that unless you do go to Deep of Night and run things like Dormant Katanas and once again try to find the Rivers of Blood. But you could very well start off with things like Barrage or Rain of Arrows and get high damage that way, although that isn't going to synergize as well because there is a melee attack power bonus that you're just not benefiting off at all because you're using bows. And unfortunately, when it comes to the Revenant and the Recluse, being that they're predominantly spellcasters, there really isn't much available to them, because the weapons that they're probably best with would be things like the Cypher Parter or the Coded Sword, which are just way too unreliable to try and get. But the Revenant with the strength-based relic can be pretty decent, and she is another character that has the relic combinations to be able to have successive attacks with both Balancer relics. But it's hard to find some strength-based weapons that can benefit off successive attacks alongside the skill damage. So yes, needless to say that this relic individually is really good, but the fact that it does stack with the other relic makes it broken. It felt like the entire purpose of this DLC was to just like completely counteract the meta that we already had in the base game, because the base game meta was just like spam spells and spam Evergales. But for the new map, there's like no Evergales, not many places to get spells and stack up on Starlight Shards. And also, the best relics that we got in this DLC were all meant for melee players. So I definitely appreciate FromSoft just trying to shift the meta a little bit and trying to just balance out the game. And it's kind of funny that they decided to balance out the game by adding in the... I'm not going to finish that. But in terms of the boss fight itself, I thought it was very cinematic, which you could basically say about every single Night Lord boss. I think I do like it a bit more than the regular Balances fights. Now, keep in mind that I actually haven't played this in Deep of Night yet, and I can guarantee that if I did play this in Deep of Night, I would have hated every second of it, because the big giant slug with that weird charging attack can be very annoying to try and counter, and the individual enemies are just super hyper and aggressive, and like every single hit would just do so much damage. But I do like it more than the regular Balances because it's more engaging. Like, they tend to be more aggressive, they don't really teleport and run away from you as much, which is part of the reason why I didn't really care much for the Balances to begin with. But both fights have amazing OSTs and probably the best skyboxes in the entire game too. But the transition was beyond shocking. Like the juxtaposition between like the, I'm not a lore guy, but from like heavenly type of angel vibes to demonic hellish shit. I thought that transition was pretty neat. But anyway, let me know what your thoughts are on the boss fight and the relic. If you had any cool builds that you did make with this character, just share what your findings were. And definitely do follow me on Twitch because I'm live there basically every day just playing the game. Doing challenge runs, making different builds and stuff, so definitely pop by there if you haven't already. But the rest of the video will just be my reaction to the boss and my very first fight. Thankfully, I didn't really get spoiled. I tried to avoid watching leaks. So the boss fight definitely was a surprise to me. Anyway, catch you guys in the next. See yous. The music stopped. Ew! Ah! Where am I going? Huh? What do you mean? What does that even mean? What does that even... there's all this stuff everywhere. They're like disgusting. Okay, well how the hell are we supposed to beat this in Deeper Night? There's no way. That skybox is so cool. Oh my god. Oh my... That is not right. Where did it go?
I'm in danger.
What do you mean? What does that even mean? What? What? That's not like the regular fight. What? Oh my goodness me. You can't block it. Blood loss?
That's nasty.
Is that? That it hit me? I'm getting my ass kicked here. Is that a DPS check? That's the boss is gone. Oh, they separated again. Oh my god. I have no heals left. Why are they damage boosted? That is actually cheating. Really? Invisible? Is it coming back again? It's coming back again. I can't see. What the hell am I meant to do? I don't know what what the hell is this? I think we did it. Balance disrupted. Oh my god. What the hell was that? I had like 5 Wending Graces there. I got my ass kicked. I had to use every single one.